Okay, so um the best way to go approach this thing is it's not let me let's use the normal flow. Now from the phone, the first thing is after doing the preliminary registration, sign up, which I've showed you the code already. I didn't write any code for anything that has to do with sign up. So the code is already the um in the code that I'm sharing with
Yeah.
you already. So what happens
Yeah.
next? The next thing is that the agent is prompted with the screen to create his account. So that's the first thing. And every other thing, everything is there under registration. So this is the first
Okay.
thing. Create agent registration. There's no drop down on that screen, so everything there is fresh data.
Okay.
Create agent registration. I used the same model because I get lazy at times. I use the same model for display that I used for data entry. So
Okay.
these particular two fields are not really required when you are sending information in for the first time. These are the only parts that are required. And don't forget,
Okay.
you don't need to collect email again. It's the email that the person registered with that you are going to send to create the person. I don't know whether you understand. The preliminary
Understand.
email you use for registration, you will just use it and fill in this thing. So these are the only required items when you are creating an account. Not preliminary registration now, you are creating the real trading account, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And I've already done this one, but I'm explaining everything for you so that you see the flow. Now, once you create it, this thing returns. This is the only API in the system. No, okay, it's not that. It's not this one. So once you create it, you might need to update it again. But before you update it, this is a way of fetching it. You
Okay.
just use this one to you pass that same email, and you'll be able to fetch it back to the client. Because normally you go from create to the screen where you will use the data. In my own case, you
Okay.
go from that screen I showed you, I mean, from the create screen to that screen, the home screen that I showed you that has those two tabs.
Yeah.
So this is what this you can use this endpoint to get by email. And I think I even have the one that you can use to get by ID. So if you have the ID
Great.
on the client already, which from the first time you call this one by email, you should have the ID on the client
Yeah.
because one of the things that is returned at every of the stuff is the ID. So this is the ID of the agent. So
Yes.
anytime I use ID, I always use it in the context of something because sometimes I don't put the prefix for where what I mean. But if you look at the data structure, you know that I'm talking of the ID of the agent. Sometimes I might call it agent ID if I'm using it somewhere, but sometimes I use it ID if it is about the agent.
ID.
So I'm sure you just put that one into perspective. You know.
Yeah.
So you can use these two to fetch it depending on where you are in the application. If you know the email, if you know the ID, then you can use this to update the information. Maybe the person wants to change
Yeah.
the address or something back. All of them raises error. Yeah. So be expecting error from the back end if you have to.
Okay.
So as part of the registration process, right? You need to call this endpoint to get all the upload requirements for that particular agent. Like now, this ID now is the agent ID,
Okay.
right? Like when I was
Yeah.
showing you where those two records, remember those two records
The
of
uploads,
upload?
yes.
Yes. So this is what I used to bring them. From the top of my head now, I know that the only agent I have in the system is ID is 8 in the database. So if I execute this one, it's supposed to bring two records. One with is uploaded, the other one with is not uploaded. You can see this is the one that has been uploaded,
Okay.
and this is the address of the U. This is the address. You don't have any business with this one actually,
Okay.
but this is where I kept it on S3. Then you can see this one has not been uploaded before. So this is what you use to get. This is what I use in short to get that list that I just did on that
Okay.
UI. You know,
Okay.
so let's assume I've not done that to UI now. This is what you will use to build that list. So
Yes.
when that list comes
Yeah.
to do the upload, you tap on the list to move to the next screen,
Next.
which
Next
is
one.
what I
Yeah.
did in my own scenario. So this is once you have done that, you have your registration upload. To create the registration upload, to upload it, this is what you call.
Okay.
This is what initially I was using this as a file, but now I just turn it into a string.
Mm.
So on behalf of what requirement are you uploading, which agent is uploading, and the remarks during upload. So if you ask what is this one, where will you get this one? I will refer you back to when I came here and
You got
asked
the registration upload.
for
Okay.
this. You see it? This is the
So
this
one is
ID.
passport, two is
Yes,
driver.
exactly. So you tell us the passport, the agent, you put the remarks, then the base 64 string of the image. And this is how you send it to the server. And you can always send every time. It will go and it will always go update the image. It will always these two things will always be overwritten once you are sending
Okay.
over and over again. And this thing is only possible when you have not submitted your information. Once you submit it, will start telling you something about submission. So yes, you use this to upload, you use this to create the account, you use this to update the account, you get back the account by email, get back by ID, get the registration uploads for the entity. Now, when you are through, all your registration upload has been completed, everything you submit. That's that
Okay.
button I'm saying you should implement. And it's just the ID. You can see it's 0 here. But what is required is the ID. You just put the ID of the agent. That's the only thing that the backend needs to to um to process it. You understand? So if
Okay. So there will
you can,
be an ID.
yes, that's the ID of the agent,
Yeah.
which will have come through any of this call, this one,
Yeah.
or you already have it here. So essentially, we are talking of this ID here.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So once you submit, uh, you the screen will now disable all the buttons for you not to be able to do anything again. Now, from the approving end, okay, and this is how you get the image in base 64. Give us the agent ID and give us that particular requirement, which currently one is for upload passport, the other one is for driver's license or so. So once you do this, it will return the base 64 string to you. Then this is the approval side from the admin. There are two things that can happen during approval. It's either your account is approved. In fact, there are three things. I think I've only done two. It's either you are approved, in which case the backend must supply the ID of the agent you want to have, the ID of the agent, and at the point of approval, we categorize the agent, whether it's a bronze, gold, or silver agent. So all these ones are I mean, it's going to be a drop down on the admin side. But just in case you want to test this thing so that you can actually see if you create an agent on the phone, you might want to see that you approve the record of the agent so that you can move to the next stage. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Stage, yes.
That's why you might need to
Exactly.
come here. Once you know
And
the
approve.
ID of the agent, you can put the ID here. And if you want to know the list of categories, you can come here. Where is it? I've been looking, see it here. You want to know the list of categories, you come here and you fire this one.
Okay.
So currently I have entry category. This is the one I would default anybody created to. Once you create it from the phone, your account on the phone, I will just default you to entry category. Then the administrator will have a module that I can use to realign you. But at the point of approval, it must select one category, even if it is to leave you at the same entry category you are defaulted to. So part of the approval is for the admin end to specify the ID of the agent and the category the agent belongs to. So,
Okay.
so
Okay.
that's for approval. The other thing that can happen is that they can return the registration.
Okay.
Yes, the registration can be
That's
returned
like a
back.
rejection.
Yes, it's like, no, you can see one of the things there is maybe you say, please, you need to upload a clear passport photograph or clear, so you can use it as a basis of sending a message to the client. But what will happen now is that, I told you that once you submit, ordinarily all the submit buttons should disappear and there will be no more editing. But with what this thing is doing now, once you say return, it's going to return the status back to pending. So automatically all those buttons will appear again, including this message. Now that takes me back to, remember when I was trying to explain to you, about these two fields. When I was telling you that when you are creating the account, they don't really matter.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. You remember I was telling you that the only thing when you are creating that you need to put is just these items here. And I also said that this email, you don't need to collect it in the UI again because it's the
Right.
email that the person
Yeah.
used to register. So now, once the person has submitted his details, you need to test the presence of this message. Once this thing is not an empty string, I want you to display it boldly.
Okay. This registration information.
Information, yes, because if your registration is rejected, if it's returned back to you, the message that is going to be like, please, can you attach a clear photograph? That is what will
Okay.
come here anytime you continue
Okay.
to fetch your data. So you should test whether this thing is not empty.
Empty.
Yes. So what I forgot to do now that I'm just remembering now is that anytime the person resubmits the information back, I should clear this message.
Okay.
So that because it's assumed that you've done what they say you should do, so you shouldn't be seeing it again. But just in case
Yes.
they still return it back, this message is what will appear there.
Right.
So this next one now, this one, this is what you are going to use, though it's a string, but this is what you'll be using to know the status of the person. It is this information here that I was explaining to you here at that time when I said the dashboard is only concerned about showing your screen.
Okay.
You can see this status
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
So this is that information approved. Your button should appear when this thing is pending. If it returns pending, all those buttons should appear. The person can edit. He can.
Buttons will appear.
Once it's showing, eh? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, I said those buttons that I said should disabled.
Yes.
Once this thing is pending, whatever, whether you are using provider to hold this structure, once this thing is pending, those buttons should be allowed to function because it is assumed that the person can edit
Yes.
his records.
Edit. Okay.
Once it is submitted or approved or any other status, those buttons should be disabled.
Okay.
So in essence, you submit, you click submit button, this status changes to submitted, right?
Yes.
But immediately the administrator uses this module to return back your registration, that status changes back to pending.
Pending. Okay.
You understand? So that is
Yeah.
the switch for those buttons. Pending is they can edit, they can resubmit, but once it is not in pending, those two buttons are not allowed to function again. In any case, even if you try them to function, the back end is already, because me, I'm guarding against it. You cannot do
Okay.
something, for example, now, if your data is no more pending, if you try to submit any changes, it will tell you that your data is no more in pending, whatever.
Okay.
Okay, so that is about registration. I think I've gone through the process of registration. So once people agents have registered like that, every morning now they can, that means the trading can start, right? And it also
Yeah.
means that this part of the logic will now hold. Once
Yes.
the agent has been approved, it means that we can now go to that main screen.
Screen.
Now, the opening of that main screen, I want to now discuss what is supposed to form the basis of the first thing that should be very imposing in the application to the agent. Now, in the morning of every day, the admin, okay, sorry, before I get to that place, now, I think I've approved agent registration. I went to do it again here, approve registration. What I tried to do was to separate all admin functions into another controller.
Okay.
So this is, for example,
Yeah.
this is the admin getting the unsubmitted, the submitted not approved. This is him getting the approved. This is the one getting the agent list on hold. Then he can approve them, which is just the ID that is required. He can approve an individual account. He can place it on hold. Okay, this is the one that, okay, I think I now remember something. I have actually designed a small messaging system into this application. So once you are anything outside approval, you need to tell the agent why you are putting him in any other status. So this is the only status that allows, this is the favorable status when you are approving a registration of an agent. But these two
Mm.
status is not favorable for the agent. This one you are putting him on hold. So part of the parameters, apart from telling us the agent, is to tell us the message. There's a subject and a message. This is the admin
Message.
now trying to do
Yes.
something. So there is, you see this subject and message. I have from the phone, from the phone, there's this. You see these two functions. What I do is I say get DTO is data transfer object. Then this is the meaning of the what it's doing. There's I call that in trading correspondence, right?
Okay.
Now,
Yeah.
if you pass in the trade ID, I've not discussed the trade with you yet. So let me just
Yeah.
pick only this one. Once you pass in an agent ID, it will give you in an ordered form, it will give you all the messages that have been sent to the agent. So you are supposed to build like a chat interface where that interface, if it's the admin that sent a message into that table, this one will be true. If you are the one, the agent that sent a message to the table, this one will be false. So you can use it to build this kind of interface that we have something on the left for the agent, all
Okay.
the reply hand. Then, so but in both cases, you do subject and message.
Right. Message.
Then I
Okay.
put agent name here. You know, sometimes I said I get lazy. So from the admin end, he should be able to see the agent that dropped the message. But you know, it doesn't make sense on the phone displaying the agent's name to him, but you can still do it anyway, you know.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
this is to let you know that there's a correspondence table there's a correspondence log for sending messages between the administrative end and the
Yeah.
agents, and the difference is that in that table, the message for the admin, this one will be true, and if it is for the one that the agent sent, it will be false. So
Close.
during approval of registration, there are two places that we write to that table. Two places essentially. Now, during approval of registration, if you have to either place the registration on hold or you have to return it for editing, you must tell us, give us a subject and a message why you are returning it for editing. So you see that former part I told you to be display message,
Yeah.
just disregard it.
Okay.
That's disregard this thing I was telling you here. Where is it?
To show. Okay.
This thing
This
that I'm
one.
saying you should be
This one.
monitoring it whether it's empty or not. Now I have
Yeah.
a more elaborate messaging
System.
implementation.
Okay. That's fine.
So all you need to do is find a place in the application where messages will be displayed, and you will normally get to it by calling this endpoint.
Okay.
Where is it again? Look at it. The one that you pass in the agent ID.
Correspondence. Okay.
Now, when we get to the trade, a trade is a transaction. You can send messages on behalf of a trade too. So this one is for a trade. They share the same table, but from the front end, generic messages go into that same table with the trade ID 0. Then every trade specific message will have trade ID there. So I'm just giving you the back end, how I'm able to use the same table to accommodate for trade specific messages and the one that are just generic in nature. So you need to prepare one part of the application that will be able to display these messages from this angle. So I've told you if you have to do a workflow that will involve using any of these things, these are essentially the management end of the registration of an agent. This is what the
Okay.
the admin end. This is the functions is going to use to to um treat all those registration. So
Okay.
immediately registration is done. I mean, approved. Let's assume that he has approved an agent. Every morning, the broker uses this module, trade
Okay.
management, to create trade parameters.
Um,
Now, what is inside a trade parameter? We just choose the currency. We just set up naira now, but Normally it will be, this will be naira, this one will point to pounds, then this one will point to naira. That's the settlement currency. So you are saying, if you want to, if I'm selling pound, the broker is saying my pounds that you want me to sell to you in naira, this is the rate at which I'm going to sell it to you. And this is the bank detail of where you should go and pay the money into for all agents that belong to this category. Now, this control amount is a counter. So let's assume he puts 10 million naira there as control amount. As the agents are sending in his submissions of the trade and is approving, he will be counting down. So if I
Okay.
approve like 1 million naira out of the 10, it will become 9 until it gets to zero. Immediately it gets to zero, any agent from the front end that is trying to place a deal, it will just be bouncing them back.
Okay.
So this is what I call control amount, right?
Okay.
Then he wants to always send them a message that they can see. So you see this information. This is the intimidating information that the client needs, the agent.
Okay.
It's going to be a list. Let me show you. Okay, once it does that, right, it will set up what we call trade parameters, and this is the admin end now. Set it up, you can
Yes.
update it, you can delete it, then he will approve it. Once he approves it, we are supposed to send a notification. Apart from the fact that the next thing I'm going to show you now is supposed to bring it to the phone of the agent concerned.
Okay.
It's supposed to send them a notification also to their
Okay.
phones once it is approved. Now, on daily basis, the rates can change at any time. So if the rate change, you will go and set up another trade parameter. That other one will still exist in the system, but you will set up another one. Then
Okay.
I will always pick the most recent one to treat an agent's deal. So let me explain something to you. Let's assume now that the agent is on a deal. He has already picked the last trade parameter he picked is on his phone. But between the time he was preparing the deal and the time he submitted the deal, the broker has gone to change the trade parameters again. You know what the system is going to do? The system is going to use the one that is on the system, not even the one coming from his phone.
Mm.
So
Okay.
I always look at the day because it's a daily activity. Every day, trade parameters must be set, notifications must be sent out to these people, and it must be on their phone. So, how do you now get it? On that page that I'm saying is the intimidating page, we are done with how trade parameters are set up. This is actually the heart of the application. Without this one on daily basis, there will be error message for anybody trying to place a deal that your trade parameters has not been set up.
So, mm.
So another way for the broker to make sure that there's no deal today is not to set up any trade parameter. Or he will go and set up a trade parameter to stop deals automatically. He will set up and approve a trade parameter with control amount equals to 0.
0.
So once he has done that, on the phone now, that page, that first page, or the most intimidating thing that will always be shining to the user there is this call trade parameter display list. Once you just give us the agent ID,
Okay.
we are going to return the list of the most current. I say a list.
Yes.
You can see. So we are
Okay.
returning all these things to the client. But this settlement currency, forget for now, don't display it to the client.
Okay.
Just concentrate on the trading currency. Because right now it is only pounds and naira. So, and I don't want to start passing any information yet. I'm just trying to be optimistic for the future. you know.
Okay.
So you don't display any of this, but this is the rate. And though you can see the bank, you pick the ID to set up the trade, but the details coming to the phone including the ID, but it will have the name, account number the person is supposed to go and pay the money into, the
Um,
bank name, the sort code, and the message that comes through notification also will be displayed
okay.
there, and the date of the last update,
Um,
so that you can see how current the information is.
yes. Okay.
You see, to start a trade there, you must click on these items.
Sure.
Yes, to start a trade. So it means that the UI must be in a way that when you want to start a trade, you will first be
Yes.
visited with a screen that will list all these trade parameters.
Mhm.
For now, it will only be one, just the price of pounds, right? But later it can have dollars and all that, different currencies. But the idea is that it is from there you will click, because we need to pass the message that the agent has already seen those parameters. It's not like you will now say you didn't know that the rate was this.
Yes. Okay.
So you need to make that rate, in fact, all this information, you need to make sure that they are actually very bold, you know, as in it should not be something that will be I didn't know the rate. No, even if you put some animations there to show that rate place, to show that this is the rate, oh, this is the rate. So once the person
Okay.
clicks on the rate, it means that he wants to initiate a trade. But the idea is that we have um okay, let's assume he clicks on it to initiate a trade, because there are places that he can still see existing trades. I have one place here
Okay.
that there's the last 50. Okay, before I show you all those ones, he has clicked on this thing and he wants to create a trade. So how does he create a trade? Look at it here. There's create trade.
Okay.
We need the agent ID.
Mhm.
Now that thing he clicked on, the trade parameter, we need the ID.
Okay.
How much does he want to trade? The amount. So when you are going to the trade creation screen, you need to move with some of the parameters so that you can still have
Okay.
it in the context of his view.
Okay.
You understand? And if you want
Yeah.
on the client, you can do some small calculation too for him. Though the next thing I'm going to return now, you will see it. So, but for creating a trade, once you give me the trade ID, the parameter, trade parameter ID, the agent ID, the amount, this reference date, sometimes there's a situation that they say it was yesterday's trade. Yeah, yesterday I paid it into the bank yesterday, but I'm booking it today. You will default it to the current date, today's date, but you allow them to edit it.
Okay.
Then this is the details of the person making the payment,
Okay.
a normal text box. So
Okay.
this is the only um, post request here that returns something. It returns the ID of that trade. And the reason why it returned it is that the next screen you are supposed to go to is supposed to show you a comprehensive detail of that trade. So you must be armed with the ID.
Yes, I do.
Anytime you
Okay.
call this thing, if everything, if it returns a 200, there's an ID returned to you.
Okay.
Now that ID, you are now supposed to use it to call this function. Get trade parameter, no, not the trade parameter display, get trade trade info display by ID. See it
Info.
here.
Yeah.
So right now it shows you all this detail to show you the name, the rate, agreed. So you know what I told you about the overriding nature of the back end, as in
Yeah.
when somebody is trying to book a trade and the rate changes. If that
Change. Yeah.
scenario happens, it will see that the rate has changed here. Then this is the amount he said he wanted to trade. The description of the currency he's trading. The bank associated. I remember something now, but no problem. I will do it. You see,
Okay.
part of the trade parameters, but includes the bank they should pay into, right? If you remember when I was
Yeah.
showing you, part of the trade
Yeah.
parameters that is transferred to them on the phone includes the bank details,
Fine. Yeah.
right? But there's
Yes.
still scenarios where those bank sometimes they pay into another bank account. So we need to give them a way to change the bank information and the account details of the trade. But it's a drop down. The
Okay.
details of those things is a drop down that I will provide for you. But there's going to be
No
an
problem.
explicit module. It must be
Mm.
something that will be explicit because I'm going to generate a report for those agents that change their bank details from the trade parameters.
Okay.
So these are the information of the trade that is coming back, account, blah, 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 rev date. Now, for every trade, there are regulatory requirements which must be uploaded. So I just
Okay.
put a counter here for the number of uploads. Then when you are now part of the information you submit, this is still a trade being set up. So part of the information is
Yes.
how do you want your settlement? You want it in one account, Naira account, or you want it in different Naira accounts? Let me explain one scenario for you. You see these agents,
Yeah.
they have what we call sub agents.
Okay.
So, for example, now you might come and meet me. If you're an agent, if I'm an agent, you might come and meet me and say, look, please, I want to transfer money to Nigeria. This is the pounds, right? And you will give me the account number where the Naira should be paid into, right?
Yeah.
Now, once you give me that account, when I'm booking the trade, my own commission as an agent, I will want it to go into my own personal account. But your own
Yes.
money, I want it to go into the account you have given me, the Naira account you've given me. So there are times that the agent will have more than two payment, I call it payment request items, you
Okay.
know. So the agent is at liberty to his settlement, the amount they want to settle him, is at liberty to break it down into different accounts.
Okay.
So that's why this one is just a counter to the number of accounts. Now, what is the total value of his breakdown so far? Before he can submit, these two values must be the same.
Mm.
If they are to settle him 500,000, for example,
Okay.
and he's still breaking it down, the first account he put 250 and he wants to submit, the system will not allow him to submit. So the
Okay.
system will only allow him to submit when this total breakdown, which might just be only one account, is equals to the settlement amount. And what is the
All right.
settlement amount? It is the multiplication of this one and this one.
Okay.
That's the rate and the amount. Normal exchange rate, currency, you understand?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
So this is what is returned. So when you create a trade, I return the ID. The next screen you are going to is a screen where we can now do more things on the trade. But with this information, you need to now put this information in the context of the user about the
All
trade.
right.
So what are the two things that you can do on a trade? Now, the first thing you can do on a trade is that you can create a Naira payment request. I call it Naira payment request. This is essentially you saying that me, this agent, for this trade, please pay my settlement money into this bank with this following account number and this description, so amount. Do you understand? That's what I call
Yes.
that part I was telling you that must be equals to the settlement amount. This is
Okay.
us telling him to break it down.
Okay.
So if he has to, he will do this thing two times
Two times.
into
Yeah.
it, yes. So on the UI, you should have where you can display all those his payment requests.
Okay.
So you can see this is the payment request by transaction ID. I use transaction ID or trade ID, they're the same thing.
Trade ID.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So you just pass in the trade ID and it will. So I can imagine maybe you want to use tab control or whatever, because there are two things we need to do on a trade. Apart from creating the trade, we need to submit how we want our payment, which is what I just showed you now. Then we
Yes.
need to upload regulatory requirements. Now,
Okay.
there's intelligence in the back end. The intelligence is
Yeah.
that it's the back end that will tell you what you are supposed to upload. So once you call this function, trade ID, with the trade ID, it will return a list to you that will include
Mm.
the requirement ID, the description of the requirement. This ID is the ID of that record in the table of your upload if you have done it
Yeah.
before. So if you have done it before, this one will be true and this one will not be zero.
Okay.
But if you have not done it before, this one will be false and this one will be equals to zero.
Okay.
You understand? So
Yes.
this is what you will use to build that same UI. You will do it essentially like the way I did that one too. You just see your requirements there. And what the system uses to do this thing is a very simple thing. Let me just show you so that you have a thorough understanding. You know, when you are creating a trade, you would have indicated the amount that you want to trade. Now, there's this rule table at the back. If you go to the parameter section, you will see, oh, I've not I've not done it. But there's a place in the back end where you can actually you indicate that if the transaction amount is between this amount and this amount, then this thing is required to be uploaded. If this one is between, there's a begin
Okay.
and end range. So your transaction amount might make you bring only one record. Sometimes because of the amount, you might see two records or three records depending on the amount. You understand?
Yeah.
So I have not done that. But so this is you create your Naira payment request, right?
Yeah.
You understand that one, Abi?
Yes.
Uh,
Understand now.
Now, every time I want to explain this one to you now, this one. Now, every time you want to create a request, there are some agents that they normally have people that they normally work with every time. People that come and meet them and bring uh, customers that bring pounds to them to sell for them to transfer money and all that. They don't always want to be entering their details every time. They want to keep it somewhere on their phone and pick it. That is
Okay.
the next thing. This next one I'm showing you now. I call it Naira account register.
Okay.
It is mapped to an agent. You will, as an agent, you will select the bank and you will write the account number and the description.
Okay.
Now, when this thing is done, this thing is going to connect to the gateway and validate this account number against this bank, right?
Okay.
Though you describe it here, but if you look at the query side of this create, let me show you the query side. You will see that because the create side only has description, right? But if you look at the
Mm.
query side, see it here. Because it's per agent. It's like a register for the agent on his phone of
Yeah.
all his consistently most frequently used Naira accounts.
Count.
You see that I'm also now returning account name.
Yes.
Now, what I do is, because I'm not connected to the gateway currently, is whatever you put in description that I return back as account name. But by the time I connect to the gateway, your description will be different Because if I
Okay.
have a customer, if I have a client that normally uses he has two accounts, I can write his name as and say account one here, but his name will still come from the bank with the same
Yes.
name, So this is just a way of you describing extra. But right now, whatever you do, I'm returning once you send the once you send this one, once you send this one, that's what I will just return back as the name here. So you need to design one part of the application that will hold like a register for agents
Account.
most frequently use Naira accounts.
Yes.
So I've done the create Naira requests as part of the deal, and I think you can delete the Naira request too, and you can
Okay.
delete a register. If if you feel that you don't use it again, you can delete the thing. So you need to do something, right? Now, if they have the Naira accounts registered on the phone, we've given them a place to register Naira accounts. You need to be able to simulate the UI for them to either create new or pick from existing when they are trying to submit their Naira request. I don't know whether that makes sense.
Makes sense. Yes.
From the UI, because that's the way I did it in the what they call it in the React Native one. At the point you want to start submitting information about the payment request, it's either you say new or pick from existing. So if you say new, I will allow you to do all these things and pick it yourself from the
Existing.
UI. But if you say from existing, then I would display a drop down where you will pick from the existing things you've created. But essentially, I will just use it to fill all these ones. So once I pick from there, I
All
will
right.
pick the because you still need to send in the same structure. But what we are saying now is that we are giving them the ability to pick from an existing list instead of entering it from the UI again.
Okay.
Then once you've done your Naira request, the next thing is the upload. I've told you how the upload list will come,
Mm.
right? So to send in
Yeah.
your upload, look at it here. Create trade requirement upload. You give us the agent ID, the trade ID, the requirement ID, and the image in base 64 string. And if you want to fetch the image back, it's also here.
Okay.
So I think once you've uploaded your images, your payment request is complete, you can go ahead and submit.
Okay.
Then if you decide not to pursue the trade before you continue, I would like you to test it. Then you can delete the trade. And delete the trade will delete everything. It will delete the payment request, it will delete any upload you've initially uploaded, it will delete the trade itself.
Okay. That means to delete a trade,
Yes, to delete
you
a
already
trade.
have to have you already have to have submitted it
No,
in
no,
the
no, no, no,
beginning.
no, no. Once you submitted the trade, you can't do anything again on the trade. This one is only possible before submission.
Okay, but this is a request to the backend.
Yes, that's what I'm saying now. Post, delete a trade. You just pass in the ID of the trade.
Okay.
Or are you confused about that part? It's like you created a trade and you don't want to pursue the trade again. Because there's one thing I've done. Anytime you want to
Okay.
create,
Okay. 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 Yes, I
uh
get it now.
uh please, if you don't
A
understand, let me
created trade
know.
is. I understand. I understand. A created trade is different from a submitted trade. I get it now.
Yes. No, the created trade is what you will still submit now.
I get. I
uh
understand.
So what I'm saying is, if you don't want to pursue it again, you will delete the
It's again.
trade. And
Trade.
there's
That
one
makes sense.
business rule here. When you are creating a trade, if you have any unsubmitted one, it will not allow you to go. It will tell you that you have not submitted an existing trade.
Yes.
So
Okay.
that's why that delete becomes very essential, because if you have made a mistake, you cannot
Okay.
create another trade if you don't delete the existing one,
Next one. Yeah.
as far as you are not going to submit it.
Okay.
So I think let me um, for now, let me stop here. I've given you enough info to for this. I want to see what you will come up with between now and the next time we meet. Of course, I will want us to be
Okay.
meeting, if not daily, but every other day, because I want to stay as close as possible on the events.
No problem.
Uh, so I am going to forward. Let me copy and send you the Git credentials now. I don't want you to start it in Excel, this guy. And one thing is this. Some of these things I've not tested them. So if there's errors, you just let me know.
Okay.
Let me just quickly fix.
Okay.
I have a very quick turnaround time when it comes to chunking out code. So
Okay.
once, how will I send you this thing now? Let me post it through this.
Can you send me the CSV file itself?
Okay, self, Abby. Okay, in that case, let
Yeah.
me put in the Swagger URL there too.
Inside. Okay.
Yes, it's actually that same backend URL, but it's slash Swagger.
Okay.
Mm, what I was saying. Is it possible to pass a file through this chat?
Through WhatsApp.
Uh, through I mean through. Okay, I should send it through WhatsApp.
Yeah, you can send it through WhatsApp.
Okay,
Yeah.
did I save it? Okay, you know what? Why don't we just quickly try? Let me see you. I want you to share your screen. Wait, this thing now. Let me stop this video.